It's the last week of June, which means we are exactly halfway through the year 2023. So there's no better time to reflect on the TV shows and movies that have already made a lasting impact on our screens. Let's jump straight into it. No further ado, shall we?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. We'll kick things off with the biggest shocker of the year so far. It is the viral Freevee hit Jury Duty, which premiered back in April. If you're not familiar with Jury Duty, the series follows a man named Ronald Gladden, who is called to serve on a jury in a civil court case. But the trial is fake. The plaintiff is fake. The defendant is fake. The judge is fake. The jury is fake. And everyone is an actor except for Ronald, who thinks that every ridiculous twist and turn occurring around him is 100% legit. It is an absolute joy to watch, and all hinges on Ronald being like a pretty awesome guy. Anyone else in this space, it wouldn't be the same. But it's not unlike The Truman Show, the Jim Carrey movie from 20 years ago, or a little-known 2003 reality series called The Joe Schmo Show, which was just announced that it will be returning to TBS next year. Which is just crazy because people have been talking about the Joe Schmo Show since this came out. So you won't be disappointed. Sammy, I know you watched. Liz, have you watched this?
I haven't, but I will now. Like, I had no idea.
Sammy, am I right? Like, awesome, right?
I loved this show so much. I think you saying that it all centers on Ronald is so, that's his name, right?
Yep.
Yeah, is so important. Like, he really is. They refer to him as the hero when they talk about him, like kind of off to the side, obviously not to his face. He doesn't know that, and I think that really is so true. He really is like the heart and soul of this whole show. And the whole point is he just goes along with it without even knowing. He's so kind and understanding to these other jury members that are just doing absolutely ridiculously embarrassing and stupid things. And he just goes along with it because he just has a heart of gold. I love him so much.
He really does.
Wow.
And the other hero of the show is James Marsden, who plays himself. So he plays James Marsden, who's been called for jury duty and ends up in this jury with Ronald and plays an exaggerated, like self-centered celebrity who's like frustrated that he has to be in jury duty because he's trying to audition for a movie role. And the whole time he's in there, he's like preparing for it. He enlists Ronald to help him read lines. But Ronald, an example of just what a good guy he is he's sitting with James in the jury holding room. And when he first recognizes who he is, he says something about movies that he was in. And James says, I was in Sonic the Hedgehog. And Ronald goes, oh, I heard that movie sucked. But then he feels so bad that he said that he goes home and watches Sonic the Hedgehog and comes back in and it's like, dude, I was wrong. It's really great. Like, it's just so endearing. And it really does hinge on him just being a good dude. And the reveal at the end, obviously, they tell him it was a prank. But it's well worth your time. Half-hour episodes on Freevee. I think people might not know Freevee is literally free TV. It's from Amazon, similar to a Tubi or a Pluto or a Zumo, if you're familiar with those. So no sign up necessary. It's so cool. Just say Jury Duty into your remote and you'll find it. All right, moving on, because we talked a lot about that. Number 4 is the Ben Affleck directed movie Air, which opened in theaters in April and is now available with Prime Video. The movie chronicles the birth of NBA legend Michael Jordan's iconic partnership with Nike, which resulted in a sneaker dynasty that earned more than $126 million in its first year alone on one pair of sneakers. To put that in perspective, $126 million in 1985 is equal to about $355 million today, which is almost exactly how much it cost to make Avengers Endgame, the movie. People bought a Marvel movie's worth of sneakers in 1985.
Wow.
And this movie, Air, also stars Ben Affleck, as well as Matt Damon, Chris Tucker, and Viola Davis, who plays Michael Jordan's mom in the film. It currently boasts 92% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes, so well worth your time, and probably it's, in our opinion, one of the best movies of the whole year. All right, quickly. Number 3 on our list is none other than HBO series Succession, which aired its series finale episode on May 28th. What can we say about Succession that hasn't already been said 100 times on What to Watch Live? It's absolutely one of the top 3 TV series of the last several years, and should absolutely be in the conversation for greatest show of all time, alongside the likes of The Sopranos, Breaking Bad, and The Wire. If you haven't watched Succession, absolutely believe the hype. It's not too late to watch it. Honestly, with only 4 seasons, you will burn through these episodes quickly. Just enjoy the absurdity of the whole thing, and go in knowing that you'll probably love to hate every single character, if not just outright loathe all of them, because they're not great people. But that's really the fun of it. So check that out. Sammy, you watch Succession? Liz, do you watch it?
I love Succession.
I haven't, no, but that is on my list. That's what I'm doing for sure.
So good, and ended in spectacular fashion too. So
Yeah, I have to watch it because I'm so tired of just not knowing all of the references when everyone's like, oh my gosh, that's so like this person in Succession or that episode. And I'm like, yeah, I got to get to see it.
Family Guy does a really great gag where they're just sitting around and just saying the names of characters, going, oh, cousin Greg, Tom, and Kendall. Like, they don't say anything else. They just yell names of characters at each other.
Yeah, so the FOMO's real.
Coming in at number 2 on our list is another surprise sleeper hit of the year, the sci-fi horror thriller movie Megan, which broke multiple box office records when it opened in theaters on January 6th. Today, you can rent or own the film on Xfinity platforms, and you absolutely should check it out. Megan follows a young girl named Katie who moves in with her Aunt Gemma, played by Allison Williams, after her parents are killed in a car accident. To help Katie cope with loneliness and the loss of her parents, Gemma, I keep wanting to say Gemma, who is a roboticist, creates a child-sized humanoid AI robot named Megan to be her loyal companion. But when Megan begins to learn faster than anyone could have ever expected, she takes her job as Katie's best friend way too serious. The only thing I'll add is that I was shocked by how funny the movie is, legitimately. It also has a surprising amount of heart, which really drives the narrative and makes you feel and root for these characters. We will say no more, because I know we have maybe a little more Megan coming up, and don't want to step on that. And last but not least, number 1 on our list of the best TV shows and movies of 2023 so far is none other than the hit HBO series The Last of Us, which premiered all the way back on January 15th. It doesn't seem that long ago. Based on the popular PlayStation video game series of the same name, The Last of Us follows the survivors of a fungus-fueled global pandemic that has turned humans into vicious zombie-like creatures. In particular, the story focuses on a smuggler named Joel, played by Pedro Pascal, who is tasked with escorting a rebellious teenager named Ellie, played by Bella Ramsey, across the country. Again, this is one of the best shows of the last few years, hands down. If you heard video game adaptation and were turned off, don't be. This is a TV series that stands on its own and is unlike any video game adaptation you've ever seen. If you heard zombies and were turned off, don't be. This is not a zombie show. This is not The Walking Dead. This is a show about the survivors of a pandemic, the human connections, the love, and the fight for survival, not the monsters that surround them. And lastly, I've said it before on What to Watch Live, but episode 3 of The Last of Us is one of the best episodes of television I've ever seen in my life. Hands down, Frank and Bill, check it out. Do not spend another day of 2023 without adding this show to your life. You will be glad you gave it a chance. All right, that does it for my list. And since this is a democracy here on What to Watch Live, I wanted to open up the floor to Liz and Sammy for some of their picks for the year. First, Liz, I want to hear from you. What is the one TV show and the one movie that really caught your attention so far this year?
Yeah, well, thanks for asking and allowing me the opportunity to talk about it and picking both a TV show and a movie, which was just a little harder than I expected it to be. But my pick for TV is Queen Charlotte, a Bridgerton story that's available now on Netflix. Okay. So Shonda Rhimes, I mean, she does it like no one else. And I don't know about you guys, but usually when there's a spinoff or even sometimes a second season, you're a little let down that it might not be as great as the first one. I can tell you that this one does not disappoint. So this is the prequel to Bridgerton, and it really centers on Queen Charlotte. And I think what I loved most about it is that, and what Shonda does that is amazing, is that she's modernized historical dramas, if you will, and makes things happen in a little out of context, but still so relevant to today. So she addresses racism and colorism in a time that it almost feels like it doesn't belong there, as well as mental illness and homosexuality. And she does it in a way where it doesn't feel forced. So I will tell you that and I'll use David's line, if you're thinking historical drama, not really my thing, this is definitely a show you won't want to miss. Queen Charlotte's story is heartwarming. It talks about how she becomes the queen, how she struggles with, loving someone and loving with someone who has a mental illness, but also all of her sacrifices and what it was like to be a mom. So I just found it amazing. I am hoping for a season 2 already of Queen Charlotte. Have you guys caught it?
I have never watched Bridgerton. It like came and went, the hype, and it just like I never got to it. But I've heard such good things about this series, and I almost want to watch this one more than I feel like regular Bridgerton. I don't know why. Yeah. I also just love Shonda Rhimes. Like, I'm a big Grey's Anatomy fan. I used to watch Station 19. So yeah, I love Shonda. I love anything she makes.
I'm a big fan of all of these like modernized historic series, whether it's Downton Abbey or Bridgerton or The Great, or like any show that has people in big, like, medieval ball gowns, but they're playing like some like old orchestra version of a Nirvana song over that, like all that. Give me all of that.
That's my favorite part, where they're at like a dance scene, it's music, and all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, I know that song. And it's this classical version of a Bruno Mars song. And you're like, what? So yeah, I agree. I'm loving it. And so we could talk about it forever, but this is my pick for TV. And then I have a pick for a movie. And David, you talked about it a little bit, and it is also Megan, which is available to rent or own. Now, this one touches me a little differently. So I know you mentioned that it's funny, and there was a dance sequence in there that I'm sure even if you haven't seen the movie, you have seen the dance sequence to this movie. But what I think is what has impressed me most about the movie in terms of leaving an impression is that it's really touching on something that is huge, big, very real for us, which is the use, advancement, and the non-regulation of AI. And so, not to get so deep with it, but it's all over the news, right? And they're talking about it a whole lot. And although it's a little lighthearted, it's creepy, but then funny, right? So it's not, I don't think, what you would expect completely. I mean, there are some parts where you're like, oh yeah, I was expecting that. But it is heartwarming, and it talks about the loss of parents and just coping with that and human connection and how important that is. But there are some parts where you're like, I'll never buy something that technologically advanced, as we all have, products in our home that do things like turn on and off lights for us. But yes, I'm all over Megan. Loved it, loved it, loved it. And I know that thank you for holding off on the conversation, but happy to talk about it some more.
Well, I mean, to your point, what's so crazy is that the movie is essentially about how fast this technology can grow and advance, and before you realize it, you're in too deep.
Yeah.
And what's crazy is that when this movie came out, I don't even think we knew what Chat GPT was. Like
Right.
it didn't even exist. And now we've watched as that has progressed so fast to the point where we're like now combining it with a conversation about Megan. It really feels a lot more like reality than it does fantasy in such a short amount of time. So
Yeah,
I don't know. Definitely cautionary tale, I think.
for sure. I mean, we all see it coming, right? But it is, in terms of the movie, when you're watching the movie, you're like, oh, I know where this is going.
Yeah.
But you're right. You're right. It is a scary time, especially when that's all we're hearing about now, and people warning, I think, everyone about the technology and just how out of control it can get. So yeah. So watch this almost realistic version of what can happen with AI. Loved Megan for sure.
That's very good.
Yeah.
Sammy, I often think of you as the Puxatawny Phyllis of What to Watch Live, the seer of seers, the prognosticator of prognosticators. And I'm curious, as you look ahead to the last 6 months of 2023, what is the TV show and movie we will be buzzing about?
Okay, well, I'm going to think about Punxsutawney Phyllis for the rest of my life. But my most anticipated movie of the next half of 2023 is Dune 2. Now, this was tough to pick just one movie coming out in the next 6 months, but I landed on Dune really for my Timmy. That would be Timothée Chalamet, and my Zendaya heads out there. And also my sci-fi nerds and the people who love Austin Butler and want to see him bald and a villain. That's why I picked Dune 2. It's the highly anticipated, not sequel, part 2, very important, of the 2021 film Dune, which came out in the fall a few years ago, obviously based on the book, and is a much better adaptation than I think the 80s version that came out. That's a little campier. This one is very high budget, scored by Hans Zimmer, directed by Denis Villeneuve. I'm butchering his name.
Villeneuve.
Denis. But it's just amazing. There's a lot of sand, like a lot of sand. They film on location. I think in somewhere in the Middle East, perhaps. But yes, great sand scenes. And the second movie, they're really expanding the cast. It's got Florence Pugh in the second one, Dave Bautista in the second one, Josh Brolin will be returning. Just an absolutely stacked cast. And I'm very excited. I don't know if either of you are also as excited as I am.
Always excited for Bautista. This is like the second month in a row we've talked about Bautista. Confession, I waited way too long to watch the first Dune and knew that it was about to expire from then HBO Max, who had the first Dune. And so I realized last minute and put it on at like midnight, knowing that it would expire at 3 a.m. on East Coast time, and fell asleep and then woke up and it had expired. So I couldn't finish it. And I never did.
The worst.
So I've seen like 3/4 of the movie, but I think I got the gist of it. A very sandy movie, as you said.
Yeah.
Liz?
I have not. And I think I'm almost glad I didn't, because that would drive me nuts if I didn't get to watch it all the way through. But I am excited about Dave Bautista as well. So I didn't even know he was in this. So very excited now that you mentioned that, for sure.
Yeah, it'll be a good one. It comes out in theaters November 3rd.
Awesome. And what's your TV show prediction?
All right. So speaking of stacked casts, my TV pick is the upcoming 3rd season of Only Murders in the Building on Hulu. You can watch the first 2 seasons right now. Season 3 premieres on August 8th. And this is my this is what I'm most excited about in the next 6 months. My whole family watches this show. We call it Omit B, as an acronym, Only Murders in the Building, Omit B. And there's so much to love about this show. First of all, I'm going to rattle off the cast here. We've got Steve Martin, love. Martin Short, love. Selena Gomez, love. Then in this next season, we're adding Paul Rudd, love. Meryl Streep, love. It's like it just keeps getting better. In season 2, their biggest guest star was Cara Delevingne, and they've just really stepped it up for season 3. I kind of can't stand her like at all. So I'm really thankful that I don't think she's coming back in the 3rd season and that we're subbing her with Meryl Streep.
Yeah, they're the same. It's an even swap.
Yeah, it's totally a fair swap. But it has just everything that you would want in a show. It's a comedy. It's also has intrigue. Obviously, murder is in the name. There's murder involved. Steve Martin, mention him again. Like, I just don't know what else you would need from a show like this. Every episode just is better than the last, and you can't wait a week for the next one, but you don't want to wait to binge it because you want to be watching it with everyone else, which is just part of the fun of it because you're kind of solving these murders as they are. So couldn't recommend this show enough. Catch up on the first 2 seasons if you haven't, and watch the 3rd season with me.
Omit B.
Omit B.
Omit B. I'll never not think of that now.
That's true.
Right? But
Yeah.
I just love watching the 3 of them together when they get interviewed at any point. Like, they're just so great, even off camera, just how they play off of each other.
Sammy, have you seen the movie The Three Amigos?
Yes.
I mean, that's a
Long
Martin
ago.
Short, Steve Martin, and Chevy Chase movie. And when I see them together, I just desperately want them to do Three Amigos lines because it is one of my favorite movies and they're so good in it. That's it. That's the end of that fascinating story. I just love that movie and I just want them to say lines from it.
I love it.
Unfortunately, there's no Three Amigos. This is a new version of the Three Amigos.
Right.
Only Murders.
Yeah, and Selena Gomez is, by all accounts, like a much nicer person than Chevy Chase. So,
And much nicer to look at too.
It's true. Check out all the TV shows and movies we just talked about, plus so much more, simply by saying what to watch into your voice remote.